Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today, I am joined by author Lisa Barnes, and her book is titled Juror Number 312. The link to understanding suicide ideation and the aftermath. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
So, listen, before we get into the book, I want to let our listening audience know about your background, what you do during the day. Um, we'll peek a little bit into your connection to the book, and then we'll get into the book.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Lisa Barnes. I'm a mother of three sons, grandmother of 19. They call me Mimi. Yes, I know that.
Mimi, 19, Mimi.
Yes.
Woo!
I know that math ain't mathing, but it is. Yes. And I love all of them. I'm originally from Kansas City. I've been in Georgia for 17 years. Um, how I even got on this journey of becoming an author is when I wrote my first book in September of 21. It's called What Now? I actually have it right here. How to Survive a Loss Due to Suicide. And it was just me telling my story after losing my youngest son to suicide in 2012. And I just wanted to tell my story because when it happened to me, I didn't have anybody that looked like me to help me through it. And so I wanted to be the blueprint, or so no one else would have that same thought. Like I didn't have anyone, I didn't know where to go. So at least they can gain strength or inspiration or guidance through me telling my story. Like, this is what I did when I felt this way. And when you see that, y- you find that you're not alone. And that's comforting, and knowing, okay, I can get through this. If she got through this, I can get through this too. And this is how I can do it. So that's why I wrote the book. But since then, um I'm just been, it's just like everything just opened up. I've created my children's book line as far as paying homage back to my son. I took a picture of my son and had it cartoon. So Awesome Arlo is my son, but my son was not autistic. Now, I am a registered behavior technician by trade. So I made Awesome Arlo a child with autism because all my children's books is geared towards raising awareness, breaking stigmas, or teaching a new concept to help the community work with children with autism. So that's how that got birthed. And this summer I was at a family picnic and my cousin was like, "We need a sequel. We need an update." He said, and I didn't think I did until he told me. He said, "I wrote the first book, like not necessarily a cliffhanger, but make you want to know, okay, what happened next." So I was thinking about it and I didn't know how to do it. And then I was called into jury duty. And yes, and I was called into jury duty. So, and my juror number was actually 312. So that's how we got the name. So everything Mia Lene went through in the beginning was me. um, but it made me, once I got to the juror box, I happened to have to sit in the juror box because that's where they put me. Um, and then my mind just went, and this is a reoccurring, and you'll find that if you have any type of trauma or tragedy, a lot of times it's a reoccurring thought. And like I was sharing, I've lost two brothers to homicide. So I went through the process of, prosecution and not necessarily trial, but them coming up to get sentenced and me being able to give a statement as a sibling. Well, with suicide, you don't have any of that. And being a woman of faith, I've never blamed God and I've never blamed my son because I knew his story. I don't agree with his choice, but I understand how he got there. So I decided to put suicide on trial. And then
Wow.
that created the book.
Wow. Well, let me just quickly unpack some of the things that you said. And
Okay.
one of the things that I love about 52 Authors, 52 Weeks is, obviously I'm the host, the creator, right? I had the vision, but when I started the show, I didn't realize how impactful it was going to be for me.
Mhm.
Yes, we're here for the audience, but as a person who thrives on growth, I'm looking for that next thing that's going to help me grow. So let me just draw a couple of parallel thoughts, and you're going to be shocked because when we do the recording for these episodes, we chat for about 5 minutes and we just start recording.
Mhm.
And during that 5 minute time frame, I never know what's going to happen during the show. So let
Mhm.
me explain. So,
Okay.
number one, my 32-year-old daughter has autism. That's number one. That's number one connection. Number two, 30 years ago, I attempted to commit suicide and I was not successful. And one of the things that I realized after writing my first book was that I held on to that pain, that disappointment, that being ashamed of what I did for so long. But once I let it go, I was able to help so many people because they say, wait a minute, you did what? But this is one thing that I know, and I know this from being an avid reader. There are many people who have made it big that have tried to end their life. And so I think there's this stigma associated just with mental health in general. But
Yes.
I recently read a book by Malcolm Jenkins, who is an NFL great, tried to commit suicide. Deion Sanders, another NFL great, tried to commit suicide. And I learned about these things by reading their books. But one of the things that I believe that has to happen next is we have to build greater awareness surrounding mental health, suicide, that it's okay not to be okay, but you need to know where to get help. So during this episode, when it airs, and for those of you who are watching this live, you will see that we have the suicide prevention number that's scrolling across the bottom because there is help. And if you don't want to call a number, phone a friend. I remember probably about, actually, it's been 2 years now.
Mhm.
I was planning my 50th birthday party and I felt myself having a breakdown.
Okay.
And I'm so grateful that I have the tools today because I was immediately provided with what my next step was going to be. Like I knew I needed to call my best friend, right? And so after calling her and crying on the phone and screaming, I was okay, right? And I
Mhm.
actually was in the car driving, and that drive could have gone a whole lot different if I wouldn't have had the tools.
Yes.
So I'm so glad that you are continuing to write. I believe that writing is definitely healing. I'm very sorry about your losses. There are so many people who are losing loved ones
Mhm.
from either suicide or homicide.
Mhm.
And where does it stop? Right?
Right.
What needs to be put in place so we can take those numbers down as
Mhm.
opposed to seeing an increase?
That's the thing. And I think it goes all the way back to mental health. And that's the thing, just being able to say, hey, I'm not feeling good today. I don't know what it is, but I'm not myself. Can you just sit with me? Or can you just hold my hand? Or sometimes a hug is all it takes. Even with grief, having people to know how to handle your grief, or even knowing you enough to know she ain't acting like herself. Just ask me, am I okay? But I'm also aware of myself. That's what emotional intelligence.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, I'm not myself today. So please forgive me in advance. Not saying that I say that to have a pass to just treat people mean or nasty, because that's not my nature. But I let them know I'm not at my best. I'll
That's
be okay.
important. It's
Yes,
important to be self-aware.
yes.
So many, like my husband and I were just talking the other day. He's like, "That's one of those buzzwords that everybody's throwing around, but what does it really mean?" And as a person who has studied emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
it's about being your own emotional boss, right?
Yes,
But also being able to know what triggers you, because there
yes.
are some people and some things and some situations that trigger you. And if you don't identify them, they'll control you.
They will control you. So identifying the triggers, and then one thing you said, having the tools. I talk about tools all the time. It's one thing to have the tools in your toolbox, but if you don't know what to do with the tools, that's just like not having them at all. But you knew where they were, what to do with them, what happens next when you were in your crisis or feeling like, hey, I'm headed down that road. But you also were aware of yourself, like, I'm not feeling myself. And because you knew you didn't want to end up like before 30 years ago. And so, and when you said that, I was like, I bet you LaDonna resonated to her, didn't it? LaDonna and Erica, that was you and your daughter.
Listen. I be trying not to associate myself with anybody in any books, but it's inevitable that you read something and you say, that was me. That's me, right? And that's what I love about reading.
Mhm.
Um, Reading allows me to escape away from the everyday pressures of life. And I am on a mission to get more people to read, because I believe Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the things are literally sucking us in. And what's happening, we're missing out on the things we need to know to
Yes.
navigate life.
Life, yes. And you got to be able to separate life, reality from fiction.
Fake
And
news.
it's starting to get entwined, just like with all this other stuff. It's hard if you don't know what you're looking at. It'll be hard to tell, is that authentic or is that the other A word,
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
is it authentic or is it, because they're getting so good at it? If you don't know how to detect it, you're gonna miss out. And that's the same thing with the people in your life. Is that the real Lisa, or is this the Lisa that's struggling? Let me ask. And having the right people around you to know, hey, you okay, you good? And that's all it takes. And when I do like book signings or even just any talks that I have around my books, that's the main thing. It's worth asking, are you okay? Now,
Mm.
whether they tell you the truth or not, that ain't on you. Now, if they tell you, no, I'm doing bad, I'm feeling like I'm going out here and do this, this, this. Now, do you have the tools to help them at that point?
Absolutely. You know, something that I do when I go. So, first of all, I and my mom and I just talked about this. I know she's listening to this episode. We've gotten to the point where we don't even go inside the grocery store now, right? So everything is delivered or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm at a drive-through going to Starbucks, if I'm going to pick up groceries or whatever, when the person approaches me, I always say, hi. I always ask, how are you? Because you never know who you can help by just being nice. But we're so accustomed to just being on the go
Mm-hmm.
and haven't taken the time to just be in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so I actually pride myself on every time I see someone, hi, how are you? Right? Because you just never know how you can turn someone's life around.
That is so true. I do that as well. And I'm gonna tell you, it's almost like, and I'm not a preacher, not at all, but I know the word and I love God. But I'm telling you, it's just He turns your pain into purpose. And now I have a story to tell, and I try to help as many people as I can. I remember I was going to get bookmarks. Well, I made bookmarks and I was going to pick them up from Walgreens, right? And for my children's book line. And the young lady at the cash register, she's like, well, what is this? So I went on to tell her. And like I told you, when I talk about Austin Marlowe, I cannot just talk about him without talking about my very first book. So when I talked about the very first book, how I even got started and told her the title, she just broke down crying. I'm like, what happened? She was like, I just tried to commit suicide 2 months ago. And she said she tried to do it in front of her 7-year-old son. I couldn't walk out of Walgreens like that. So I had to pour and say and do whatever needed to be said and done right then and there, hoping that it was enough that she knows she can get past this, you know?
Yes.
But had I never said anything, she wouldn't have never said anything.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you do this, but one of my authors from a previous week, in fact, I still have his book somewhere here because I need to reach out to him. But he talked about he always has his book with him and he's gifting it to people because everything is not about a sale, right?
It's not.
And
It's not.
so I had actually gotten away from having my books in the car, but I actually am putting them back in the car because, and actually not just taking it a step further, putting them in the car, but always having one in my purse or in my pocket, because you never know who you will see and how you can impact them.
Mhm.
And with the number of silent strugglers, it's needed, right? And
Yes.
I want to talk about the book a little bit, not about
Mhm.
everything,
Okay.
but so first of all, I'm trying to figure out what I did with my, gotta get my reading glasses because you know, I'm in the age where you need a little assistance with the
Oh yeah.
vision.
I'm
So
not in denial at all.
when I first got the book, right,
Mhm.
and I opened it up, I always, before I get into the reading, I just like to look around in the book, right? And
Mhm.
so the first thing I did was actually went to the back
Okay.
to learn more about you. And I saw Missouri and
Yes.
I saw the three sons. I must have missed the 19 grandchildren because I didn't see that before.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I start there, right? And then I go right into the beginning. Okay. And so I was like, well, the book is about a jury, it's about suicide, but I need to see where this is going, right? So I started reading the book, right? And I
Mhm.
kid you not, this was me. I was looking down at the book and I was like, okay, what's going to be next? Right? Okay, what's going to be next? And it literally sucked me in from the moment I started it. And because it's not a real thick book, this is a book you can read in one sitting. And
Mhm.
then at the end, you mad because you like, well, what's next? I need some more. So you wrote the first book. This was the follow-up to the first book. So I want you to kind of set the stage for our listening and viewing audience. Just really starting with Mia.
Okay. Well, just to give y'all a little hint, I'm Mia. Everything that happened in the first part was me. I was recently selected for jury duty. And yes, and I was juror number 312. So everything that happened all the way up to getting in the jury box really did happen. But once I did get there, my mind just went. It just went because I'm like, I really didn't want to do jury duty. I had a lot of stuff to do at work. I'd rather be at work doing this. It was like a inconvenience per se. And I was hoping that the case would get dismissed like the last time I got called for jury duty, but it didn't. Excuse me, I'm coming off a cold, so I apologize. Um, and I just decided, and the thought, a reoccurring thought that's been since I lost my son, and again, because I've lost two brothers to homicide and going through the process of uh the the people getting convicted and coming up for parole and things like that. I had to go through that. Well, I didn't have that opportunity with my son because of suicide. And because of my faith, I'm a woman of faith. I've never blamed God. I never blamed my son. However, I have misplaced anger. What do you do with that? So I decided to put suicide on trial.
So let me just read something, a
Okay.
passage from the book.
Okay.
And this is after they talk about, how in case they'll say, I'm talking to the listening audience, how
Mhm.
they'll say, we're going to hear testimony, right? And
Yes.
so in the book, it's noted, we must remember that the issue we are facing here today is not an isolated one. Suicide is a public health crisis, and it is a crisis that affects us all.
Yes.
And two things I like. Number one, suicide is on trial. But number two, it is a crisis. And I think if we were to validate the numbers, we would see that it's a lot higher. Because in my mind, the suicide number is those that successfully committed suicide, as well as those that were not successful.
Mhm.
And all need all people, we need an understanding of how prevalent it is and what we can do to decrease the numbers.
Mhm. I agree because let me ask you this, and I haven't looked that much into it, but I think now you gave me some homework to do. Like, what does the aftercare look like? Like when you've been identified as attempting, like 30 years ago when you attempted, what was the aftercare like? Was there any aftercare?
So you know what? No one has ever asked me that question. So I'll just briefly share what happened. So, number one, I took 30 Tylenol. I was struggling with the fact that I was the mom of a special needs daughter. I was trying to navigate life as a single parent. And so this is what happened in this order. I took the pills. There was an ambulance. I went to the emergency room. They pumped my stomach with charcoal, followed by another ambulance ride to a hospital called Hartgrove Hospital. I was there probably about 6 hours, and I think my mother came to pick me up. And after that, I did what we do, went on with life, business as usual. And it wasn't until I wrote my book, Grow
Mhm.
With Me, in 2023, was when I started to really unpack multiple things. Number one, I felt alone in that moment. And so I think it's important as mothers, grandmothers, friends, we have to let our people know that they are not alone.
Right.
And part of emotional intelligence is relationship management. So,
Mhm.
people who you are communicating with on a daily, monthly, yearly basis, it's important for you to recognize when they're not okay so that
Mhm.
you can offer support. One of
Yeah.
the things I love about FaceTime, you can see the face of the person
Yep.
and can recognize you don't look too good.
I say that all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna call you on FaceTime. I need to see your face. And then that way I can see what you're not telling me. And vice versa. You can see, oh, you don't feel good, you sleepy. You can tell because my eyes is my giveaway.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So I
Listen,
can't tell
eyes.
my eyes give away whatever I'm feeling. You gonna know it because it's through my eyes. But and that's so important. It is. It's very important. So with that, and look how long you was carrying whatever it is you were carrying. But now by reading my book, and if you can relate to LaDonna, I don't know if you ever even had the conversation with your daughter. I don't know if that's even a possibility because I don't know the severity of her diagnosis.
Yeah, my daughter is deaf. And mentally, she'll be 33 this year. So
Mhm.
mentally, she's probably about 5. So we've
Okay.
never wait, I have conversations with her, but she don't have a clue what I'm talking about, right?
Okay.
So But one of the things that I did realize on the other side of that experience
Mm,
was that I had to stop feeling sorry for myself
mm.
and recognize that God gave her to me for a reason and that I needed to be responsible for what he gave me.
Yes. Yes, no, and I've told myself I'm a one thing my first lady back home, Sister Effie Bolton, being a young mother, raising three sons, single parent, I used to lean on her a lot. And one thing she always said to me was, Lisa, you one of God's picks. You one of God's picks. I'm like, but why he picked me? I used to always say, but why he picked me? Everything is so hard. But now I understand all the things he had me to go through. I'm able to use those experiences now to help others. I needed that. So I have a lived experience so I can help
Yes.
other people. Um, he allowed me to be in this position to deal with losing a child to suicide because he knew I would do something with it. Not
Mm.
saying other people wouldn't, but he knew I'm
He
going to leave
knows.
to others what I wish I had 12 years ago. And that's what keeps me going. I'm telling you, I wrote my first book September 7th, and my classmate had just buried a child the Saturday before I released my book.
Mm.
I reached out to him and asked him, could I send him a copy of my book? Because I wrote the first book in a way that it could help anybody that's lost anyone or any parent that lost a child for any reason, not just suicide. Even though I'm coming from the aspect of being a woman, a mother of color that lost a child to suicide, I wrote it in a way that it could help as many people as possible. Not knowing he had lost his son to suicide.
Wow.
Now you
Well,
see, by me doing that early, it allowed me to know I wrote the book and I got it to the person it was supposed to get to, whether it got to anybody else.
absolutely. And in the book, I just want to highlight that you call out, and I think it's worth saying,
Mhm.
suicide affects people across all demographics,
Yes.
age, gender, race, socioeconomic status. It affects us all in ways, you said it, that are invisible. And again, we live in this world where we have the mask on, we have reality TV, we're living these fake lives,
Mhm.
but suicide, homicide is real.
It's real. It is real. Yep. And like I said, in this one, suicide is a manipulator, a home wrecker. He what else he do? A narcissist. He's all of them.
You called him out.
Yes. I called him out because I've seen him. I've seen him wreak havoc in too many people's lives that I love and people that I don't even know. Anytime it's affected, just the ideation of it, I just wish he just go away because that's not the answer. We're losing too many people and we have too much talent in the graveyard now.
Oh, that's a word. That's a word. Well, listen, we are almost out of time. So I have to know what does your future look like? What are you working on next?
Okay. Well, actually I am 2025 should end up being a big year for me.
Will be a big year.
Yes, yes. So I released this one last year, and I'm currently working on a book of short stories called The Bounce Back Queens. And that should be released probably within the month. And then I'm working on my big novel called Buck Henley's Girls. And because
Mhm.
I'm a only girl with my mom, I was raised with three brothers. I have sisters on my dad's side, but I didn't grow up with them. So I always wonder what life would have been like had I grew up with my sisters. So that thought, and then I just went with it. So, but
I
I'm excited. Yeah.
I love it. You
Yeah.
know what? For me, writing is very therapeutic. I'm
Yeah.
actually in the middle of writing my second book, but it wasn't until I was in a place of stillness last September when I fell and had ankle surgery that I realized what type of impact the book was going to have. And
Mhm.
so I had in my mind this date of when I wanted to finish it. But
Mhm.
as I kept, and one of the things I do, and I encourage people to do this, I go to either Starbucks or Panera Bread, and I just literally sit there and write. And
Yes.
I'm away from my computer, right? Away from all of my distractions. And
Uh-huh.
the more that I've been writing, what I realized regarding my next book was that it was more than a book. And
Yes.
so 2025 is definitely going to be on and popping because when I release mine, I'm releasing several things simultaneously, and
Yes.
I'm ready for everything that 2025 has to offer.
I'm so ready.
Yes. Well, listen, Sora, I have to say that so folks will know
Yes,
it's
yes,
pretty poodles.
yes.
Has been such an honor to have you on 52 authors, 52 weeks. I wish you much success in life and your upcoming endeavors.
Thank
And for the rest of you, our listening viewing audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next week.